Thank you for joining us. I'd like to first of all welcome our team of speakers, that is John Devaney, Sean Finn and Ciaran Bolger, all from EFM, and we're delighted to have you joining us today to speak about the communication on your stakeholders on financial matters. I suppose, 2021, we're into the heart of the dreary month of January. But we're all still intact. And it's still very, very challenging times. Unfortunately, the figures in this part of the world are staggeringly high and very sad to see indeed. We've had, a figure yesterday of 1,800 deaths in one day. So we are a long way away from the pandemic resolution, but we still have obviously seen the way we've reacted in terms of creating online events such as this to continue our communication. So today I'm joined with John, Sean and Ciaran to go through some of these topics. But before we start, we are 21 days into January now. And the one thing I would ask them all is to, in terms of Brexit, the dreaded Brexit word, has there been any apparent things come out, difficulties, blockers in terms of trade and the process that's happening that is apparent to them in their respective areas? So can I take that one up with John first of all and ask him, is there anything that is relevant that he has seen so far in terms of the transition that we're seeing with Brexit?
Hello, hi Paul, great to be online and involved in the webinar. Yeah, Brexit definitely has been, I think, the feeling before Brexit, before on the run-in, was that we had a significant amount of complexity and we had very little knowledge on what the rules were going to be and a very short period of time to implement it in. And I think even at this stage with 21 days gone, I think we've seen, even though companies have done their best to prepare, especially with SMEs, you still have a position where businesses weren't prepared because they didn't have enough time to actually interpret what the rules are. So I've been working with businesses in the UK, and we basically took steps prior to the year end to bring in stock. One particular company in from Italy. That was an interesting one in that we got the stock in. It came in 3-4 days before Christmas. We got it into the warehouse, so we didn't even have time to book it into stock for a formal stock check, but we just left it on the pallets wrapped. The lorry driver didn't get back to Italy for Christmas. That was a kind of a hands-on. The poor guy turned around, it was probably on the Tuesday, he got down and he got stuck. And as I say, even when he had got into Calais, he still had a long run down to Italy. And he didn't, as I say, he didn't make it back for Christmas Day. So that was kind of one anecdotal kind of thing of where Brexit and year end was impacting. I think what is causing a lot of people concern at the moment is VAT and VAT deferment. Most companies have gone ahead and got the EORI number. They're ready. And of course, there are no duties required due to there being a deal. But VAT is still payable at the point of import. So that means that companies either have to have a VAT deferment, they have to have an arrangement with their carrier, who hopefully will have that deferment in place. But still there's a cash flow impact straight away, that the goods that you're bringing in and that came in trouble-free, and I'll use Italy as an example, we would put a unit on a lorry in northern Italy on a Friday, and that would effectively be in the UK on Monday and in a distribution hub for Tuesday, and could be anywhere in the UK on a Wednesday. And these particular units I'm talking about are air conditioning units which would go on the roofs of buildings. So there'd be a crane in place to put them on top. So at the moment, we can't guarantee a delivery date because we don't know what the delays are. And we've certainly got the issue that we have to pay 20% VAT upfront at the point of import. The carrier will not pick up the load from Italy unless all the paperwork has been done by the supplying company, and that means that all of the origin, all the codes have got to be correct, all the commodity codes on the invoice effectively, and that everything's got to be in place for the VAT to be charged and to come in. And of course, there's an administration charge on that as well. So that in 21 days in, we're seeing delays in getting VAT deferments. The revenue are looking for detailed accounts and detailed management accounts and supporting documentation before they even consider a VAT deferment. And in the meantime, that VAT has got to be paid at the point of import. So quite a bit of, and that's coming in. And I'm getting similar kind of anecdotal stories about exporting as well, if you're trying to get things into Spain. And certainly anything that's pharmaceutical or is food orientated, there's what they call sanitation rules, the Europeans call it. So again, health certificates, veterinary certificates, medical certificates. So a lot more paperwork and a lot more delay and quite a bit of confusion. That would be the area. We're kind of working through the problems on a day-by-day basis. Yeah, that's my experience so far.
Ciaran, you're in the sunny southeast of Carlow, County Carlow in Ireland, a beautiful part. In terms of the experience of customers, we'd say sending things into England, are you hearing anything in terms of how that is transitioning at the moment?
Oh yeah, I mean, I suppose the two main topics were COVID and Brexit. So I mean, companies are kind of trying to deal with both. Sometimes they maybe look to blame or seek to blame both of them. But in terms of Brexit and sending goods outside of Ireland, certainly, every company is seeing delays due to paperwork, as John mentioned. Lead times are being impacted. But I suppose prior to Brexit, I mean, we had been working with clients about making sure that all their suppliers and customers were aware that there may be delays due to Brexit. Practical things like, I mean, ordering computer equipment through, multinational companies sourced through the UK. It's an extra week or two perhaps on lead times. But what you would say to clients, you should expect that for the moment. Things will get better as the paperwork and the documentation. It's like anything else. There wasn't a magic button on the 1st of January that people understood all the commodity codes, the changes that were going to be required. So, bear with it, like there will be delays, but I think it's going to get better.
And Sean, in terms of the port in Dublin, are you seeing any significant changes there?
Not as yet, Paul, to be honest, but I mean, again, I'd echo both what John and Ciaran have said. I think the issue is delays. Even anecdotally in working with local clients here, a lot of the people I would be working with were based in services. So they, in advance of Brexit, apart from doing the obvious practical things that people were already doing, they were attempting to source alternative supplies directly through Europe, rather than via the UK where that was feasible.
Well, the reason I brought this up is because there's a significant number of companies showing interest in terms of the Irish market now over here. And we have actually presented EFM as a solution based to this within the ecosystem of BITA, that we have people on the ground who will facilitate those English companies who are interested in the Irish market in terms of a solution to gain access to Europe. So it's good to have that brief conversation around that subject matter. But we're here today to speak about the communication of stakeholders in financial matters. So I'll start with John in terms of, what is a stakeholder and who are the business stakeholders?
Well, I think, Paul, in general, kind of say generic as stakeholder, a stakeholder is a party that has an interest in the company, either in the way they either affect the business or the way they're affected by the business. So if we kind of think of primary stakeholders for a kind of a typical company, you'll have investors, you'll have employees, you'll have customers, and you'll have suppliers. And all of those gain from a company doing well, and if the company's in difficulty, there's a risk to them. So there's an element of risk attached to being a stakeholder, either in your investment, if you're an employee, your job, if you're a customer, your supply of goods, and if you're a supplier, that customer relationship. So stakeholders are probably happiest when they have the knowledge that a company that they have a stake in, shall we say, is run well, is that the management are competent, that they're in control of their business, that they're dealing with the ups and downs, and that they are, you know, a good management team, planning, controlling, organizing. Now, you know, the last 12 months has probably been as testing a time for any set of managers, directors of businesses, both with COVID, with the pandemic, and with Brexit. So they're the challenges to the business, and, you know, strong businesses, well-run businesses will come through these challenges, and weaker businesses, you know, will be in serious difficulty, and unfortunately, you know, may go under. So that's always the risk. So well-run businesses will have a good management. They'll have key strategies, and they'll have good processes in place to deal with the challenges that they meet. But that's kind of doing things well. That's the kind of the efficiency of the business. I think what we're going to talk about today and use specific examples about is that it's great and it's a good management practice for the business to communicate that message to their stakeholders, because a stakeholder necessarily won't know that the business is being well run, that you're in control, that your market has gone down because of Brexit or gone up. So effectively that the management team, and in many cases for small business, that's the owners as well, that they're in control of of running that business despite those difficult areas that are coming along. And it's a case of communicating that to your stakeholders and making sure and keeping them confident that, you know, the business is in good hands, and that the relationships that you have with your stakeholders are strong and not at risk. And of course, we'll pass on to the lads as they go through with Ciaran and Sean as well. But, you know, sometimes with stakeholders, it's very easy to communicate the good news. You know, the record sales month, the record profits, growth, etc. But what's not as easy to communicate, and maybe more important, is communicating the bad news, the things that may not be going well, but that you're indicating you know that it's happening, and you have a plan and a strategy in place to deal with those. So again, giving confidence to those key stakeholders that you're in a position to respond, and that the business as a result is not at risk or is not at a significant risk. So that's the kind of the backdrop against the other areas that we're going to go into.
And in terms of communication, let's take communication as a piece, and things, the change in communication. And one of the prevalent changes in communication, and I'll ask this one to Ciaran, is take, for instance, the banking structure, my bank manager. Nowadays, you don't even know his name. Traditionally, we always knew the bank manager, the red man, the bank manager. All of these things were very relevant. But nowadays, you don't even know who to talk to. So do I start talking to him now? And you know, how do I do it? How has that changed?
No, that has changed. And I suppose maybe to go back one step, there may have been like a stigma that you actually know the bank manager. Like, why do you know your bank manager? But of course, it's an important relationship to have. And especially now, like, again, COVID, Brexit, because they're well aware of those environments. They're very well aware of, you know, your members, our clients have to operate in that environment. So, you know, they're there to help as well in good times and in bad. Like, it is a bit like a marriage. So yeah, traditionally you used to like walk into the branch manager, you'd see him, you might see him or her around the town or village, and you might get to say hello to them. Right? That's all changed now. It's a centralized function. So I deal with a lot of clients, and the first thing I ask them is like, who is your bank relationship manager? Who is, you know, she or he? Sometimes they know, you'd be amazed the amount of time they don't know. And, you know, luckily in the network at EFM, and we have contacts in the different banks where you can find out who that relationship manager is. So that's a great point of contact for you as a business to find out information. How do I go about getting an overdraft facility? How do I go about getting a credit card facility? How do I go about paying foreign currency to a different jurisdiction? And the manager may not have the information, but they will be able to point you in the right direction. And as a business in these uncertain times, you may have a funding need. And there's nothing wrong with going to the bank and saying, look, at the moment, I'm having difficulty because I have to pay my suppliers early or my customers are paying me late. These are all very real business experiences that banks are well used to. So what we're used to doing with clients is obviously working on forecasts, simple cash flow forecasts that show and can show a need to the bank, that they have a need for an overdraft facility, they have a need for a term loan. And so, you know, some of your members may not be used to the banking language, and like the banks all want to make sure that their loan is secured. So how do they do that? And again, you know, within EFM, we can facilitate that communication between the client and the bank, so everyone understands where everyone is coming from. And it's such an important thing to do. Like, we meet virtually now. So, I mean, it used to be have the cup of coffee. Now it can be a virtual coffee. Like, everyone has a mobile phone. So we're so used to speaking to each other on the phone. But I do think, you know, we do like to do face-to-face as well. So maybe when the COVID regulations change, it will revert back to that. Because I know your members as well, like me, like, you know, we do like to do the face-to-face meetings, but for the moment, this is the best and the safest way to do it. But we're all in the same boat.
So in terms of keeping on the theme of communication, and I suppose all the entities, like that's the financial side, and we've seen the differences and changes in those areas. But in terms of, you know, I want to put this one to Sean, you know, in terms of my auditor or my accountant, who may not necessarily understand the business model, may not understand my business, but is still my accountant and leaves the whole process of the accountancy till the end of the year, to the year end. In terms of communication, how can I improve that?
There are a number of different ways. I mean, the way I would look at your relationship with your auditor is that there's two sides to it. On the one hand, they work on the compliance side with you, so they're doing your accounting records, your tax returns at the end of the year, all your relevant compliance bits, company's office, etc. On the other hand, they can also be a very clear asset for you. You know, when you do possibly run into trouble, or whether you need assistance, say, as Ciaran referred to, when you're looking for funding from a bank or another source. So I think really the thing to do is it comes back to this whole thing of communication and having built up a relationship with your auditor and with your accountant where that is possible. It really, there's a book I think I read a number of years ago, I think by an American guy called Harvey McKay. I think it was something like dig your well before you're thirsty. So in an ideal world, you will have already got a fairly effective relationship with your auditor and your accountant, so that you can pick up the phone to him or her and go through things as necessary. Where you don't now have it, you at least know who it is, and I would suggest that you literally take the time to engage in a Zoom call with them, to go through the things that are there. So, you know, three things I look at in particular with an auditor and accountant is you need to engage with them. You need to plan with them for the work that you're doing, and you need to structure the work that you're doing or that they're doing for you, so that things run smoothly at all stages. In an ideal world, it's best to have one point of contact for your auditor, because you as the owner of the business may be very good on sales, may be very good on production, may be very good on all the other aspects of the business, but when it comes to finance, you might just feel, I don't particularly want to deal with that. So you might need somebody else to help you. And again, that's where, you know, EFM can help out in that whole process and be that sort of link between your business and your accountant, particularly if your accountant has a knack not to be able to talk in, you know, regular speak, let's say, and is too used to using accounting terms. So, you know, an auditor can do an awful lot for you, and an accountant can do an awful lot for you. There are three specific you know, sort of anecdotal things I can mention from experiences I've had. One where, you know, I was involved in an audit where we had taken over the audit from a previous firm. It was discovered that the tax computations from the previous years were totally incorrect. They were corrected. You know, it saved a certain degree of money. So it was a plus in that sense. It's small, but it's there. Another business I was involved in, at one point, the auditor suggested, look, you know, you're planning on growth, you have a lot of money in place. It might be an idea to set aside, say, a kind of a reserve of a 6-month salary. Now, that proved to be a very good piece of advice, because within about 6 months of having set up that fund, the company went through a management buyout, and that was one of the factors that actually helped the business get the funding needed from the accountants. You know, and there's several other examples you could go through, but the principle is you need to establish a working relationship with your accountant, have that link person, you know, one particular person who deals with the pure finance side within your business, either in the business or, you know, somebody like ourselves from EFM. But it's worth to have that relationship with your accountant, because when you need, that's, you know, when you need them, then they're there.
And in terms of EFM, you know, if we're looking at, we'd say, the geographics of Ireland, you know, how many people are available to different SMEs in different areas all over Ireland within the EFM structure?
Well, you know, well, the Irish team might be relatively small, but right now, but we're capable of reaching any part of the country, any part of the island. But the beauty of the network is we can call in. You know, John is based in the UK, but has done a lot of work in Ireland. So that's the beauty of what we have, is that if I'm working with a client and it involves an area that, you know, a new piece of work comes into that I might not feel entirely comfortable doing, or, you know, that somebody else in the network would be in better position to do it, that I can contact John or Ciaran or whoever it happens to be and say, look, I have client X here, they might be, you know, better positioned to help you.
Yeah,
Very good. In terms of in the area of insurance, John, I'm going to ask you this question. So insurance is kind of like, you know, your doctor. You kind of go to the same doctor every year, and you know, you nearly go to the same insurance broker every year, and he tells you the same thing and rips you apart every year on year. And it's one of these areas that you nearly accept what he's going to say. How can I get best value, you know, when, you know, and find out that if an insurance broker is putting up a premium, that is the best value in the market? Can I do that through you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, I have kind of practical experience in that as well, Paul. And I suppose the one thing, the first thing there is, and it kind of came through in your last question as well, about, you know, filing counts at the last minute with audit. And again, with insurance renewals, you know, time is very useful. So not leaving it late, and being proactive with the, you know, the board that I'd be working with. And I would expect, you know, the best way to approach it is a couple of months before renewal date. And I would be expecting a good broker to be sending out a renewal questionnaire to me. Now, in that renewal questionnaire, or if I would expect to see a lot of questions about the broad scope of the business. And if it's not being provided by the broker, I would be providing that information to the broker. So that would be the turnover, how it's changed, the number of employees, the geographic location of employees, the type of work that they're doing, and a lot of the risk that's involved. Now, again, if we look back at the last 12 months and we look at Brexit, that's quite important, because as we know, the UK, you know, travel insurance has changed. If you have employees and you're sending them abroad, something that would need to be considered in the travel insurance premium, for instance, which would be different to the relationship we had last year. So certainly, and what I would tend to do is looking at turnover, employees, different types of policies, asking the broker what's new on the market, what are you seeing in your experience that is an exposure to a risk that may not be there. And certainly COVID-19 and Brexit bring that in. Again, with COVID-19, an awful lot of people working remotely from home now for the first time. So the health and safety issues of working from home. Who's supplying their computers? Are those computers insured? Is the environment that you're expecting your employee to work from home, is that a safe environment? Have you done an assessment of what that environment is like? So what I tend to do as a kind of an overview on that is kind of think of it, it's kind of what I call SOGI, and it's SOGI is for society, organizational, group, and individual. So if you think of society, what's changed outside the business? Well, the two big things are Brexit and COVID in the last 12 months. How have those impacted on potential insurance claims and your insurability? Organization, how has your organization changed in structure in the last 12 months? Both in terms of your employees, but also your customers and your suppliers. How have the different departments changed, maybe the groups? So your sales department may be at home working on telesales now rather than out on the road. Are you insuring them for going out on the road, driving cars, and they're actually not doing that? Are there costs being incurred that actually are not relevant, but on the other hand, are there costs or insurable events that you're not covering that should be because of the nature of the way things have changed? So that's kind of looking at the group side, and then the individuals, you know, how are they being catered for, both from their health and their safety and the insurable risks there. So that's really about having a dialogue with your broker, getting the expertise from the broker. And then I would expect the broker to be coming back to me with a range of quotes, not just one company, but actually saying, well, if you go with AXA, these are good, these are very reliable. But actually on travel, Chubb are very good on the travel side. So effectively, rather than a blanket policy which covers everything and could be very expensive, you start to look at a bespoke policy. Now, that would be the kind of driver I would have. And I would be liaising with the directors, the board, to make sure that I fully understood the risks, that the broker understood the risks, and that I was communicating that well. And then once we've established what those risks are and that we're fully covered, what's the best possible premiums that we can get for those? So that would be the kind of side. But the key thing there is the relationship, the communication with the broker, and giving yourself the time to actually have that discussion, because the later you leave it, the more rushed it is, because we all know once the deadline goes at 12 o'clock on the conclusion of the policy, you need another policy in place the following day, and you don't necessarily have the time to get those best quotes. So it's really, again, communication, relationship, and understanding the risks. And with EFM, we're well qualified, and there's a good range of us who can contribute to that discussion and have the industry experience to pass that on as well. If it's an area that I'm not that well, that I don't know that much about.
Well, there's an interesting question here. Sorry, go on, Ciaran.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, a lot of people would want to know, like, I just want to reduce my insurance costs, and there's nothing wrong with asking your broker, how can I reduce my insurance costs while still keeping the required cover in place? So, I mean, like, a good broker will tell you that these are the risks. If it's the type of, in terms of employees, that a lot of them are working in, you know, in different areas, if it's administration. So understanding what the risk drivers are to your premium, and, you know, challenging it if necessary, because sometimes it could be misinformation, you know, getting for business interruption, just understanding what they're insuring there, your level of sales, that you might have part sales. It might be, well, I'm selling a service, I'm selling labor. So the more information you give the brokers, they have the opportunity to reduce that cost and that risk for you with the underwriters.
Okay, we have a question here from one of our listeners in terms of credit insurance. How can they improve? They're dependent on credit insurance because they do invoice factoring. So how can they improve their credit insurance for some of their clients that have been refused by the likes of Euler? Can EFM assist them in that? Well,
I have experience with trade credit insurance. So and working with the likes of Euler, you know, they've obviously spoken to Euler and said that, look, we've been declined. So they may have used, they may not have used their own discretionary limit in this case. But what I have found in the past is that if you present the case, if you can show the credit insurer that they have a good payment history, you know, obviously if they haven't been trading with them before, Can they use something like a credit report? And again, Euler will have access to a lot of these as well. So it does depend, or have they been trading with them for a number of years? But my experience, when you can present to the credit insurers, they have a good payment history, they will review that. And sometimes you do have a discretionary limit that you can give clients. And in the event that you need to make a claim, they will ask you on what basis did you use that discretionary limit, and using payment history can be deemed satisfactory.
Okay, a question from what appears to be a disgruntled business owner. Why do my investors want to interfere and charge me monitoring fees for doing not an awful lot? Ciaran.
Because that's just the way it is. No, I mean, obviously, when I say, you're dealing with, venture capitalists and private equity, and they will see that they need to cover their fund costs. So, I mean, that's for part of that, you're getting advisory services. So the key thing there is, look, I was happy to get the venture capital money. I was happy to get the private equity. I have to pay this fee, but you can, rather than looking at it as a cost to the business, which it is because you do have to pay it out, is that how can I use their services to better my business? So it could be a thing of, well, look, can you introduce me to a number of businesses to promote sales? Or can I use your marketing expertise to help promote my business, my product? So rather than just seeing it as a cost, you turn it around and say, yes, while it is a cost, let's make sure I maximize what I can get in return from it. So look, in terms of the interference, that probably comes back to the communication. It's like, how do I get on with these people? How am I communicating with them? When they come to a board meeting, am I just telling them what they want to hear? Or I'm actually, again, accepting that they can challenge the business and make the business better. So it's really how you view it. And again, at the start, when you're getting involved with them, that you see that you can have a good relationship. And don't be afraid to use their expertise in the different areas.
Okay, a lot of companies at the moment obviously are feeling this, my next question, and that would be to Sean. So I need to speak to the tax authorities because I can't afford to pay this month's bill. Where do we start there, Sean?
Well, you got to start. I mean, again, when you look at the list of possible stakeholders, the taxman is probably the last one you'd sort of want to be thinking about. But a little bit like Shrek, might be an ogre, but not an entirely unkind one, or not necessarily lacking in total humanity. So again, it comes back to what I said about relationship with auditors. If you've already established a working relationship with your tax advisor, who can then in turn deal with your with the taxman where you do run into trouble, basically you've, the minute I suppose that there's a sign of trouble, you have got to contact them, because the more you engage with them, the better you have of striking a deal where there's a real serious issue. One of the clients I was working with recently, just before Christmas, in a number of years ago, had that exact thing had happened to them. They were not in a position to pay their VAT bill. They were under serious financial pressure, but they reached out to the tax authorities, and they were able to strike a deal with them that basically they were in a position to pay off based on a specific agreed amount a month. It ran over, or running over, a total of about 3.5 to 4 years. And actually the rate of interest, the effective rate of interest to apply, was actually lower than if they'd had to go elsewhere to get the finance. So, while the taxman might be seen as the big bad sort of boogeyman, they can also be seen as something very, positive, that if you engage with them, you can get an arrangement that works for you and for them. Because after all, if you think about it, at the end of the day, it's also in their interest that you continue to remain viable. Okay, well, I think through the various questions we've displayed how EFM can actually impact in helping people on both sides of the water, both in the UK and Ireland, which is, I suppose, very apt when it comes to what we do as an organisation in the BITA. Before we finish, I always love to throw a kind of little broadsider.
So I'm going to do that again because I love doing these things. I'm going to start with John. John, 2021, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I think the good is the positive news on the vaccine. I think that once that will get business rolling, and we can get out again and start meeting face to face, because I think that's what we all that's what we all want to do. We don't want to be at our desks on Zoom. We want to be meeting one another and doing business and driving business forward. And I think the vaccine is the way forward on that. The bad is probably in the immediate, as Ciaran said earlier, dealing with, shall we say, dealing with Brexit and dealing with the immediate challenges. But I believe as well that business will come out on top on that, that entrepreneurs and businesses are very good at very quickly establishing what the rules of business are and what's the best way to do business in that area. And I suppose it's going to be a case of, you know, it's an ideal opportunity for EFM to get involved with businesses both in the UK and in Ireland to overcome those challenges, because they can be overcome, and we're certainly delighted and have been working with businesses in doing that, both sides of the Irish Sea. So that would be good. So that's the hard bit, but it's the bad. The ugly bit would be, well, the way things are going with lockdown, I'm not going to get a haircut for a long time. So that's not going to be too good. So yeah, I'm not going to be, some of these Zoom calls are going to look, as say, one of my colleagues before, in the first lockdown, when I was in need of a haircut, sent me, Amazoned me a tub of Brill cream. So I'll be using the Brill cream again, I think, before. So that's the ugly bit for me, I think. You know.
Ciaran?
In any order.
In any order.
Tipperary. Good, the bad, the ugly. Now you can take that whichever way you want. But no, just on a kind of business matter, yeah, the good, the bad and the ugly would have to be COVID. But the good is, I think, the good you see in people come together, sessions like this, like, I mean, we wouldn't have done this 12 months ago, and now, you know, we're happy to share this with your members as well. And if people have questions, like, I mean, I answer many questions to help people, and that's the good you see in people, that we all want to help businesses come through this. And I think if you do survive this, businesses will be run differently and better, because this is a difficult, the bad and ugly times. And
Sean?
Okay, I'll start with the ugly and say it left Washington yesterday, and I think, you know, slight change there. The bad, I would tend to agree, is COVID and the continuing lockdown and the pressure, because I think one thing that hasn't sort of been spoken about yet, really at an overall level, is how we're going to deal with the mental health issues that are out there from this, because there are going to be pressures on people from effectively being locked down for so long. But I think in conjunction with what both Ciaran and John have said in relation to the good, you know, there is an awful lot of good in people out there, and I think the inventiveness of what has happened, the inventiveness rather of entrepreneurs and businesses who've been involved in the situation from a bad point of view. You know, I was working with the concert hall, National Concert Hall here in Dublin last year, and they obviously, like, their business just went over a cliff, you know, from the middle of March onwards. But what they're now doing is they're live streaming events, and that into the future will allow them to actually generate more revenue, because, you know, yeah, would much prefer to be going to events, to live music events or live other types of events, whatever they might be. But into the future, if you can't get a ticket for an event, you know, why not live stream it, and you pay a tenner to watch it. It's not the same thing as being there, but it's something new, and it's, you know, it's an added revenue thing for the future. So, you know, there's lots of good things that have come out of it as well, in a way.
Good stuff. Well, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for the session today. John, Ciaran and Sean, EMF have been a brilliant supporter of BITA and will continue to do so. So take care, be safe and stay well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.